Have you ever noticed how the deepest spiritual seekers often seem to withdraw from conventional relationships? That monk living in solitude on a mountain, the mystic who abandoned family life for deeper communion with the divine, the spiritual teacher who speaks of detachment from worldly connections as a path to enlightenment. Perhaps you've felt this tension in your own life, moments where your spiritual practice or awakening experiences created a strange distance between you and those closest to you. That peculiar sensation of sitting at a dinner table with loved ones, yet feeling like you're observing the interaction from a great distance. The growing difficulty in engaging with conversations that once captivated you. The subtle but persistent sense that your inner journey is taking you somewhere others cannot follow, creating an invisible but palpable separation that both liberates and isolates. You might find yourself increasingly drawn to solitude, not from antisocial tendencies, but because something essential seems to happen in that aloneness that becomes diluted or obscured in constant company. Yet this pull toward separation often creates conflict, both internal struggle with your own attachment needs and external tension with those who feel your withdrawal as rejection or abandonment. The most challenging aspect isn't even the separation itself, but the difficulty in articulating what's happening. When asked why you're pulling away, the words that come about energy fields, vibrational mismatches, or spiritual alignment often sound hollow or pretentious, even to your own ears. You see the hurt in others' eyes as they interpret your withdrawal as judgment or superiority, when in fact it feels like something happening to you rather than a choice you're consciously making. The guilt becomes a constant companion, guilt about not being present enough, not connecting deeply enough, not fulfilling the roles and expectations that once seemed so clearly part of your life path. You wonder if your spiritual journey is somehow flawed, if true awakening should instead bring greater connection rather than this growing sense of fundamental aloneness. Or perhaps you question the relationships themselves, wondering if the discomfort signals that certain connections have served their purpose and should now be released, a possibility that carries its own burden of responsibility and potential regret. What if this tension between spiritual awakening and conventional relationships isn't a sign that something has gone wrong, but is instead a natural stage in the evolution of consciousness? What if the growing sense of separation isn't a rejection of human connection but a transformation in how that connection is experienced and expressed? There is a reason why spiritual traditions across time and cultures have acknowledged this difficult passage. There is meaning in the discomfort that arises when awakening consciousness encounters the limitations of conventional relational patterns. And understanding this meaning might transform how you navigate this challenging terrain, allowing neither for complete withdrawal from human bonds, nor for the compromise of your deepest truth in order to maintain comfortable but constraining connections. This is where Sigmund Freud's revolutionary insights into human psychology offer us a surprising framework for understanding this spiritual dilemma. While Freud is rarely associated with spiritual awakening, indeed he was famously skeptical of religious and mystical experiences, his penetrating analysis of human relational patterns and the unconscious dimensions of attachment provide profound perspectives on why spiritual awakening so often creates tension in conventional relationships. At the heart of Freud's understanding was his recognition that human relationships are never simply what they appear to be on the surface. Beneath the conscious connections we form with others lies a complex web of unconscious needs, projections, transferences, and repetition patterns that shape our interactions in ways we rarely recognize. According to Freud, our adult relationships are profoundly influenced by our earliest attachment experiences, creating templates that we unconsciously seek to repeat or repair throughout our lives. While Freud's views have been expanded and refined by later theorists, his core insight remains powerful. Much of what we call love and connection operates through unconscious processes that bind us not just to others, but to our own unresolved psychological material. For the spiritually awakening individual, this dynamic takes on special significance. What distinguishes genuine spiritual awakening from other forms of personal development is precisely the increased consciousness it brings to previously unconscious material. The awakening person begins to perceive patterns, motivations, and attachments that were previously operating outside awareness. This growing consciousness doesn't eliminate the unconscious. No human being can achieve that. But it does create a different relationship to unconscious material, bringing into awareness aspects of experience that most people continue to engage with unknowingly. As this process unfolds, The awakening person inevitably begins to see their relationships differently, recognizing the unconscious dynamics that have shaped their connections and becoming increasingly uncomfortable with patterns that once seemed natural and inevitable. One of the most significant insights from Freud's work involves what he called transference, the unconscious projection of feelings, expectations, and relational patterns from formative relationships, particularly with parents, onto current relationships. Transference isn't a pathology but a basic feature of human connection. We all engage in it to some degree, perceiving others not just as they are but through the lens of our internal working models of relationship. Most people remain largely unaware of their transference patterns, experiencing their projections as reality rather than as constructions shaped by their personal history. But the spiritually awakening person begins to recognize transference as it happens, seeing how their perception of others is colored by unconscious material rising from early experiences. This recognition creates a profound shift. The other person begins to separate from the projections that were previously overlaid upon them, emerging as both more and less than what the unconscious had made them to be. If you're finding these perspectives illuminating for your own experience, please take a moment to leave a like on this video to help others discover this content who may be navigating similar terrain. This growing awareness of transference doesn't just affect how the awakening person perceives others, it fundamentally alters how they experience being perceived. As projection becomes more visible, the awakening individual becomes increasingly conscious of how others project onto them, seeing not just the projections themselves but the unconscious needs and patterns driving them. They recognize how friends, family members, and romantic partners relate not to them as they are, but to images constructed from the other's unconscious material. This recognition can create a profound sense of isolation, even in the midst of seemingly intimate connection. The awakening person begins to feel that others don't truly see them, but instead relate to projections that have little to do with their actual being. What once felt like loving connection now reveals itself as a complex interplay of unconscious needs and images, creating a longing for a more authentic form of relationship that seems increasingly elusive in conventional interactions. The awakening person's changing relationship to transference and projection often manifests as a growing discomfort with roles, those unconsciously assigned positions in relationship that Freud recognized as powerfully shaped by early attachment patterns. Within families, social circles, and romantic partnerships, we unconsciously assign and assume roles that create a sense of psychological safety and continuity. The responsible one, the creative one, the emotional one, the stable one, the one who needs, the one who provides, the one who knows, the one who learns. These roles aren't consciously chosen, but emerge from the intersection of our unconscious patterns with those of others, creating systems of complementary interaction. As spiritual awakening brings greater consciousness to these previously unconscious arrangements, the awakening person finds it increasingly difficult to continue playing roles that no longer align with their emerging sense of authentic being. Yet stepping out of these roles creates significant disruption in relationship systems that have organized themselves around stable, predictable patterns of interaction. Let me pause here for a moment because I need to ask you something that matters. Have you ever felt like you are living two lives at once? The one everyone sees, where you smile and function and pretend everything is fine, and the one inside your head, where you are struggling, confused, doubting every choice you make. That split, that exhausting performance of being okay when you are not, it is something Freud understood deeply. And I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are human. And what you are feeling right now, this exact struggle you are carrying, someone else watching this video is feeling it too. They are sitting there thinking they are the only one, just like you might be thinking right now. So I am going to ask you to do something that might feel vulnerable, but it is important. Go down to the comments right now and type this exact phrase, I feel this. Just those 3 words, I feel this. You do not need to explain. You do not need to write your whole story. Just let those words be your voice today, because when you do that, something powerful happens. The person scrolling through these comments, the one who feels completely alone in their pain, they are going to see your comment, and for the first time in maybe days, weeks, or months, they are going to realize they are not alone either. Your 3 words might be the thing that helps them breathe a little easier tonight. This is not just about engagement. This is about connection. This is about breaking the silence that keeps us isolated in our suffering. Freud built his entire life's work on one simple truth. We heal when we speak what has been hidden. So speak it now. Go to the comments. Type I feel this. And know that by doing so, you are not just helping yourself. You are helping every single person who needs to know that what they feel is real, is valid, and is shared. Do it now. I will wait. Beyond transference and roles, Freud's work points to another dimension of relationship that becomes increasingly visible through spiritual awakening, the unconscious contracts that underlie our connections with others. These aren't formal agreements, but implicit understandings about what each person will provide, require, allow, or forbid within the relationship. In healthy relationships, these contracts allow for mutual growth and adaptation. But many relationships form around more restrictive contracts. I will care for you if you remain vulnerable. I will provide stability if you supply emotional intensity. I will offer approval if you meet my unexpressed expectations. Most people remain unaware of these implicit contracts, experiencing them simply as the natural terms of relationship. But the awakening person begins to perceive these unconscious agreements more clearly, recognizing how they limit authentic expression and impose conditions on connection. As this awareness grows, many conventional relationships begin to feel constricting in ways they never did before, not because the other person has changed, but because the awakening individual can no longer unconsciously participate in agreements that restrict their emerging authentic expression. This growing consciousness of previously unconscious relational patterns creates a profound paradox for the spiritually awakening person. On one hand, awakening brings an increased capacity for genuine presence, compassion, and unconditional love, qualities that would seem to enhance relationship rather than create distance from it. On the other hand, this same awakening makes it increasingly difficult to participate in the unconscious patterns and agreements that structure conventional relationships. The result is often a period of significant relational disruption, where existing connections either transform to accommodate greater consciousness or dissolve under the pressure of patterns that can no longer be sustained. This disruption isn't a rejection of relationship itself, but a necessary phase in the evolution toward more conscious forms of connection. If you're finding value in understanding these dynamics through the lens of depth psychology, please consider leaving a like on this video to help others discover this perspective. You already know this, but we're not ready to understand ourselves alone. The human mind is vast, complex, and often frightening to explore without guidance. If this content is helping you see yourself more clearly, if these insights about Freud's work are bringing light to parts of yourself you've kept hidden, then consider subscribing to this channel. This is not just another psychology channel. This is a space where we explore the depths of human nature together, where we take the most profound concepts from psychoanalysis and make them accessible, practical, and deeply personal. Every video here is designed to help you understand, not just theory, but yourself, your patterns, your fears, your desires, the invisible forces that have been shaping your choices without your awareness. When you subscribe, you are making a commitment to yourself. You are saying that you are ready to look deeper, to understand more, to stop running from the truth of who you are. And I promise you this, I will be here every week, bringing you insights that matter, explanations that actually make sense, and perspectives that can genuinely change how you see yourself and the world around you. This journey of self-understanding is not easy. Freud knew this. He spent his entire life mapping the human psyche precisely because he understood how lost we can feel inside our own minds. But you do not have to walk this path alone. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Become part of a community of people who have decided that understanding themselves is worth the discomfort, worth the effort, worth the time. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. And that relationship deserves your attention, your curiosity, and your courage. So subscribe now, and let's continue this exploration together. Your future self will thank you for taking this step today. This understanding helps clarify the provocative statement that spiritually awake people don't need relationships. In one sense, the statement contains a profound truth. The awakening person increasingly recognizes that many conventional relationships are structured around unconscious needs rather than conscious choice. Needs for validation, security, completion, distraction from inner emptiness, reinforcement of self-concept, and other psychological functions that become less compelling as awakening progresses. As these unconscious needs lose their driving force, relationships based primarily on their fulfillment naturally become less essential. The awakening person doesn't need relationships in the same way they once did, because the unconscious patterns that created that sense of need are increasingly recognized and integrated rather than enacted through external connections. But in another sense, the statement represents a partial truth, that can lead to misunderstanding and unnecessary isolation. While spiritually awake, people may not need relationships driven by unconscious patterns and projections. This doesn't mean they no longer value authentic connection. In fact, the opposite is often true. As unconscious needs and projections diminish, the capacity for genuine presence with another increases, creating the possibility for relationships characterized by conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. The awakening person doesn't need relationships less. They need a different quality of relationship, one that allows for authenticity, mutual recognition, and freedom from unconscious contracts and role assignments. This distinction is crucial for navigating the relational challenges that awakening often brings, preventing both the denial of legitimate needs for connection and the compromise of emerging authenticity for the sake of maintaining comfortable but constraining relationships. The evolution toward more conscious relationship often follows a recognizable pattern. Initially, as the awakening person becomes more aware of unconscious dynamics in their relationships, they may indeed withdraw from many connections, creating space to integrate their emerging insights without the constant pressure of unconscious expectations and projections. This period of withdrawal isn't a rejection of relationship itself, but a necessary recalibration, a time to distinguish between authentic connection and patterns driven by unconscious material. During this phase, solitude often becomes precious, not as an escape from others, but as an environment where the awakening person can experience themselves directly without the distorting influence of others' projections and expectations. As this integration progresses, the awakening person typically begins to seek new forms of connection, relationships where both parties maintain conscious awareness of projections rather than becoming identified with them, where roles remain flexible rather than rigidly assigned, where unconscious contracts are regularly brought to awareness and renegotiated rather than unconsciously enforced. These more conscious relationships don't eliminate the unconscious. Again, no human relationship can achieve that, but they create space for the unconscious to be acknowledged and worked with, rather than blindly enacted. The result isn't detachment from relationship, but a transformed engagement with it, where connection emerges from conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with the relational challenges that spiritual awakening can bring. They may find perspective and validation for experiences that are often difficult to articulate and understand. This understanding suggests several practical approaches for navigating the relational challenges that spiritual awakening typically brings. First, it validates the legitimacy of withdrawal when that withdrawal serves the integration of emerging consciousness. The period of pulling back from certain relationships isn't a failure of compassion or connection, but a necessary phase in the evolution toward more conscious engagement. This validation doesn't justify unkindness or abrupt abandonment of commitments, but offers perspective on a process that is often misinterpreted as rejection or spiritual bypassing when it may actually represent authentic engagement with a necessary developmental passage. Second, it encourages discernment rather than blanket withdrawal from all relationship. While some connections may be so fundamentally structured around unconscious patterns that they cannot survive increased consciousness, others may have the flexibility to evolve toward greater mutuality and awareness. The key question isn't whether to engage in relationship, but which specific relationships have the capacity to accommodate the awakening person's changing consciousness and which are so rigidly organized around unconscious patterns that they become constricting or impossible to maintain authentically. This discernment prevents both the unnecessary abandonment of potentially transformable connections and the compromise of emerging authenticity for relationships that fundamentally require unconsciousness to function. Third, it points toward intentional cultivation of more conscious forms of relationship, even as the awakening person recognizes the unconscious dimensions that inevitably remain present. These more conscious connections typically share certain qualities: mutual recognition of projections when they arise, regular renegotiation of relational patterns rather than rigid adherence to established roles, comfort with changing needs and expressions rather than requirements to maintain consistent presentations of self, and perhaps most importantly, a fundamental valuing of each person's authentic unfolding over the maintenance of comfortable but limiting patterns. Finding or creating such relationships often becomes a natural priority for the awakening person, not to fulfill unconscious needs, but to express the genuine connection that becomes possible as those needs are increasingly recognized and integrated rather than enacted. As we move toward concluding our exploration of why spiritually awake people might seem not to need relationships, it's worth considering how this understanding might transform our approach to both spiritual awakening and relationship itself. Perhaps what we're witnessing in the awakening person's changing relationship to connection isn't a movement away from relationship itself, but an evolution toward more conscious forms of engagement, forms that better express the authenticity and presence that awakening cultivates. This perspective invites us to hold both the legitimacy of withdrawal as an integration phase and the possibility of renewed connection as that integration progresses, avoiding both the romanticization of isolation as spiritually superior and the pathologizing of necessary separation as spiritual bypassing or fear of intimacy. In the end, the most profound insight may be that spiritual awakening doesn't eliminate the human need for connection, but transforms how that connection is experienced and expressed. The awakening person doesn't transcend relationship, but engages with it differently, less driven by unconscious needs and patterns, more available for genuine presence and authentic exchange. This transformation often requires passages through apparent separation, periods where the dismantling of unconscious patterns creates distance from relationships structured around those very patterns. But this separation serves the potential emergence of more conscious connection, not the transcendence of relationship itself. The spiritually awake person may indeed not need relationships in the same way they once did, but this doesn't mean they've moved beyond relationship. Rather, it signals their evolution toward forms of connection that better express the consciousness, presence, and authenticity that awakening cultivates, forms that may appear as non-relationship, from perspectives still organized around unconscious patterns, but that actually represent relationship's deeper possibility.